Have you ever noticed that patients almost never get excited about dentistry? I've never had a patient walk into an office and say, I can't wait to get a crown today. I've never heard anyone say, I've been saving my whole life for a root canal. And yet, people invest thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars in dental treatment every single day. So here's the question. What are they actually buying? Because I don't think they're buying what most dentists think they're buying. Patients don't buy dentistry, they buy a better life. One of the biggest shifts in my career happened when I stopped asking myself, how do I help patients say yes to treatment? And started asking, what are they really hoping to say yes to? Those are two completely different questions. For 37 years, I've had the privilege of sitting with patients during some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. I've watched fear become hope. I've watched embarrassment become confidence. I watched uncertainty become peace. After thousands of those conversations, I've learned something. Patients almost never come to us because they want dentistry. They come because they want something dentistry makes possible. If we miss that, we miss the conversation that matters most. So today, I want to challenge one of the biggest assumptions in dentistry. Maybe, just maybe, patients aren't buying procedures at all. Think about the last time you made a significant purchase. Maybe it was a home, a vacation, a new car, a wedding ring. Were you really buying the object, or were you buying what you believed that object would bring into your life? Security, freedom, adventure, connection, peace of mind, hope. Human beings don't simply buy products. We buy what we believe those products will make possible. Dentistry isn't any different. Think about two restaurants. One sells a hamburger for $12, the other charges $85. Is the difference really the hamburger? Of course not. You're paying for the atmosphere, the chef, the service, the experience, the story, the attention to detail. Nobody leaves saying, that was the greatest bun I've ever eaten. They leave talking about how they felt, the celebration, the conversation, the memory they created, the experience. Dentistry works exactly the same way. Patients aren't simply evaluating procedures, they're evaluating the experience of being cared for. And this is where I believe many practices unintentionally lose patients. Not because their dentistry isn't excellent, but because they're communicating the wrong things. Dentists spend years mastering clinical excellence, and they should. But then we sit down with patients and we explain dentistry, crowns and implants, occlusion, bone grafts, margins, materials. Meanwhile, the patient is silently asking completely different questions. Will I finally smile in family pictures? Will I be able to eat without pain? Will I stop covering my mouth when I laugh? Will I finally feel like myself again? Those are two completely different conversations. I'll never forget a patient named Michael. Michael came into the practice needing comprehensive dentistry. On paper, it looked like another treatment plan, another consultation, another patient. But I had learned something years earlier. People are never just another patient. So instead of immediately explaining the dentistry, I became curious. I asked questions. I listened. Not because I had a script, because I genuinely wanted to understand his story. As Michael talked, I realized something. He wasn't really talking about his teeth. He was talking about his life, his confidence, his future, how he avoided smiling, how he felt every time he looked in the mirror. What he wanted wasn't simply healthier teeth. He wanted to feel like himself again. That changed everything. Not because I suddenly had better words, because Michael felt understood. And here's what I've learned over and over again. When people feel understood, they become much more willing to understand you. That's not sales, that's human connection. Patients rarely ask the question they're actually asking. Very few patients will ever look at their dentist and say, "Doctor, how much profit are you making on this?" They don't say that, but they might joke with their spouse in the parking lot, "Well, I guess we'll be helping him buy a new boat." You've heard it. I've heard it. And while it's usually said with a laugh, there's something underneath that joke. The real question isn't about the boat. The real question is, can I trust that this recommendation is truly about me? Would you recommend this if I were your sister? Would you recommend this if I were your dad? Are you on my side? Those are the questions patients are trying to answer. And here's what's fascinating. They almost never answer those questions based on your credentials or your technology or your beautiful office. They answer them based on how you make them feel. Do they feel heard? Do they feel respected? Do they feel understood? Do they believe you're advocating for them? One of my favorite reminders is this: patients aren't trying to figure out whether you're a good dentist. They're trying to figure out whether you're on their side. One question has shaped almost everything I do. What if we came into every conversation believing there's something remarkable waiting to be discovered? Imagine what changes when we begin there. Instead of "what tooth hurts," what inspired you to come see us today? Instead of "here's what you need," we ask, what are you hoping will be different? Instead of trying to convince, we become curious, and something remarkable happens. Patients begin discovering their own reasons to move forward because people are far more committed to discoveries they make than conclusions someone else hands them. I've said this for years. Patients buy quality of life, not procedures. Nobody dreams about a piece of porcelain. They dream about smiling with confidence. Nobody dreams about implants. They dream about eating comfortably with the people they love. Nobody dreams about a full mouth reconstruction. They dream about getting their life back. Dentistry isn't the destination, it's the vehicle. Life is the destination. And here's why I believe this changes everything. When we communicate procedures, patients compare price. When we communicate possibilities, patients begin to understand value. That doesn't mean everyone says yes, but it does mean every patient has the opportunity to make a decision based on understanding instead of confusion. Because people don't make their biggest decisions when they feel pressured. They make them when they feel safe. The next time you sit down with a patient, before you think about the treatment plan, before you think about the financial arrangements, before you think about case acceptance, ask yourself one question: what better life is this person hoping to build? Because if you can answer that, everything changes. Your recommendations become pathways. Your consultations become conversations. Your patients stop feeling like cases. They become people. I'll leave you with this. Never fall so in love with the dentistry that you forgot the life the patient is trying to build. Because patients don't buy crowns. They buy confidence. They don't buy veneers. They buy the freedom to smile. They don't buy implants. They buy the ability to enjoy dinner with their families. Dentistry is simply the bridge. The destination has always been a better life. And I think that's what we've been called to do all along. Not just create beautiful dentistry, but help people create beautiful lives. If this perspective challenged the way you think about patient communication, I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me, what's one conversation with a patient that changed the way you practice? And if you're a practice owner who wants to build a culture where patients feel deeply understood, your team communicates with confidence, and comprehensive care becomes a natural outcome of trust, not pressure, I'd love to hear what you're working on. Send me a message.